How you doing? This is Dr. Paul. We are in every other Tuesday. We are in this podcast show, Bridges Live Presents Freedom Fight. My name is Dr. Paul Dyer. My co-host is Mr. Josh Hatch, founder of freedomfighters.info. If you ever want to catch any of our shows, please catch me up on a YouTube channel or any other podcast you get your podcast stations. So, Josh, it's been 2 weeks since we've had the show, but we've been in contact because we have this caucus that we talk about. We are in meetings every Monday together. We are attuned to what isn't going on. And just today, less than an hour ago, here on our television, Chauvin gets a guilty verdict. Here's my problem. And I hope, listen to my words, people, when I say this. I am happy that the family can start healing from their loss. I am happy that if this can be some comfort to them, then take it. I'm also happy for people who believe that this is a step in the right direction of Black America. Me personally, I'm not falling for the old okie doke. And what I mean by that, people of the Republic, the Democratic Republic, is that if it was not for the videotape, he would not have been convicted. Now, you would have taken the same testimonies from the onlookers, right? You would have brought them into court just like you did, and he still would not have been convicted, and you could not tell me otherwise. That's how I feel. So my problem is this the right direction for Black America? No. He probably got convicted maybe because the world was watching. Not because they wanted to convict him, but they didn't want the world to see what they didn't do. So that's my issue. So it still has nothing to do with Black America. You know what I mean? It has more to do with the world sees than what is right and just. Why do I say that? Because there are countless of killings in America of police officers killing Black men, and they're not convicted because the world isn't watching them. What do you think, Josh?
I mean, I have to agree with you. And one of the things that I was going to say, and, we were talking this prior to actually coming on to the show. First and foremost, thank everybody for tuning in to Freedom Fight. But yeah, regarding the case, the mere fact that the community was glued to the TV, that people around the world were watching, they were aware, they were conscious of what was going on. I think the pressure was put on to do the right thing. There were a lot of people that wanted to see what the outcome of this particular trial was going to be. Mm-hmm. And I believe that on both sides that there are, was always the threat of people erupting in violent manners or expressing themselves based off their frustration, dependent upon the outcome of the trial. Because right now, people of color, especially, are sick and tired of the police misusing their authority and their power in killing innocent people. And so this is one of the lessons that we can really take from this. And that lesson is
power.
The power
Yep.
of
the
community unity, mm-hmm. The power of being able to be present, to being able to be conscious. Most people, when they do their dirt, they like to do it in the dark. Mm-hmm. No one likes to be exposed.
Right.
So to have the community tune in and to know and to be conscious of what's going on is very, very important. And this is the reason why we do this show right now, so that the community can be empowered with facts. And the facts that I really want to cover tonight is about a witness that the state was using for decades to incarcerate countless of people.
And are you going to talk about a specific case, or is this on Freedom's case?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely going to be talking about Freedom's case.
Good, okay.
But this particular witness has been utilized by the state for decades to incarcerate people, mainly for homicides. And that witness that I'm going to be talking about is Joseph Capero.
The dirty cop.
Now, Joseph Capero, he worked for the Baltimore City Police Department for 21 years. I want to put things in their proper perspective. So from 1970 to 1991, Joseph Capero was the ballistics expert that worked in the crime lab for Baltimore City Police Department.
Right.
In 1991, Joseph Capero joined the State Police Department, in which he was quickly promoted to the supervisor of firearms and tool marks. And he also supervised the integrated ballistics identification system. There is a paper that shows that Joseph, and I want to make sure that I'm speaking accurately, that Mr. Capero here, he had over 2,745 cases from 1997 to 2007. That's just while he was working with the state. He has testified in state and federal courts in more than just Maryland. Prosecutors love Joseph Capero. They would say that he was fabulous in front of a jury. By 1994, Joseph Capero was in court 2 to 3 times a week testifying. That's how much prosecutors relied on Joseph Capero.
And his testimony and his expertise. We got to keep, because they kept saying he was an expert. They kept saying he was an honest expert.
Correct.
That those words mean something as we say them now, because we find a lot of things later. Go.
Yes, most definitely. And honesty goes into being a credible witness. Mm-hmm. And they presented Joseph Capero not just as a witness that was credible, but a witness that was credible, that had an expertise in particular fields of science, based off of all of his credentials. So he was known as the end-all be-all in ballistics. Well, what transpired is a public defender from the Innocent Project became very concerned about Mr. Capero's qualifications while she was reviewing some transcripts of other cases that she was involved in and also investigated. In these transcripts, she discovered something peculiar, and that is Mr. Capero's testimony itself regarding his qualifications. He testified that he had a degree from Rochester Institute of Technology in photo science. He testified that he had, in a separate trial, a degree from the same institute, Rochester, in aerospace engineering. Then in another trial, he would testify that he has a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Maryland. He also testified that he had a certificate of completion from the Association of Firearms and Tool Marks Examiners course, all of which later on was found out to be a lie. As a matter of fact, in my possession, I have a letter from the University of Maryland. And in this letter, it says that they've checked all of their records and they cannot find a Joseph Capero on their rosters as being even enrolled as a student there. Not only that, I also have another affidavit from Rochester Institute saying the same thing. So Joseph Capero lied about his credentials. This became known. Not only did he lie about his credentials, later on, after his suicide, he killed himself because he was confronted about his fraudulent testimony behind his convictions, behind his testimony. And he I believe he felt like he was going to be convicted. And because of that, he killed himself. But it was found out that he forged his signature on several documents that required someone to verify his work. Why is that relevant in a criminal matter? We ask ourselves, is all of this relevant in a criminal matter? Of course it is, because it speaks directly to the heart of a person's credibility.
Right.
The notion that the state was allowed to utilize a person that presented purged testimony to sway the jury into believing that they were an actual expert and that what they were saying was not based on their own opinion, but was based on a degree that they had earned, was a lie. It was a lie. And in some cases, a lot of these cases, this purged testimony affected criminal defendants. Why? Because a lot of times the verdict of guilt or innocence hinged on Joseph Capero's testimony. What do I mean? Okay. In this particular case, in Freedom's case, Joseph Capero originally testified on the stand that there was one weapon used in this particular crime. However, the state knew, as smart as the state was, that they could not get a guilty finding of two co-defendants if Joseph Capero was on the stand saying that one weapon was being used. So what did the state do? On cross-examination, they asked the question from Mr. Capero, well, can you prove that only one weapon was used? And he said no. This is what he said. Now let's look at this. I just told you how Joseph Capero lied about his credentials. I just told you that Joseph Capero was involved in over 4,000 cases. In a short span of some years, he did 2,000 cases. He was the end-all be-all, a person highly accredited on both sides of the aisle that no one would contest. So when he changed his testimony, of course, this swayed the jury. Now, years later, what would happen is an actual expert would come and review some of Joseph Capero's work. And this is what he said about this particular case. He said that on cross-examination, Mr. Capero initially testified unequivocally that one gun fired all 6 bullets. On redirect, he changed his testimony and said that he could not tell how many guns were used to fire the 6 bullets. Mr. Capero's report shows that he identified the class characteristics of each bullet. Each bullet had 6 land and groove impression left twists. Contrary to what Mr. Capero stated, if an examiner can determine the class characteristics of a bullet, that bullet has value for comparison purposes. This truth of ballistics analysts undermines Mr. Capero's assertion that the bullets, and he identified according to their identification markings could not be used for comparison purposes. Contrary to what Mr. Capera stated, bullets made of different materials can be compared to determine whether they came from the same gun. Now, I'm going to stop right there. I could go further because this is an actual affidavit from him explaining and undermining the work that Mr. Capera originally used or would use in trial. Mm-hmm. This is damaging and devastating for the state's attorney's office, as you may know. But now I told you, has he done the very same thing that my client is asserting? Yes, he has. Do I have proof that he's done? Absolutely.
So this is what gets people sidetracked. With this proof that you have, they have.
Correct.
You don't have anything they don't.
No.
And yet, this trial on Freedom is still in jail because of things not being said or done. Like, so...
Why is he still in prison?
Yeah, that's the tough questions, and okay, it's not just.
I'm ready to answer for you, and I'm also going to answer for our viewers.
Because
the only thing that I'd ask you to do, Dr. Dyer, is to reach in your back pocket, grab your wallet, and raise it in the air. That's the answer. That's the reason.
That's the reason
why he's still in prison right now. Because see, any other time when an issue dealing with Copero comes up, normally what would happen is they'll try to brush this under the rug. Although I have internal memorandums from the Maryland State Police Department that says that they would not attempt to brush these matters under the rug, they have been. And my proof is Freedom, because he's still sitting in prison. On just the Copero issue alone, Freedom should have been back in court. And this case should have been retried. With the affidavit from the actual expert that had degrees in the science that Copero lied and said that he had degrees in, when he came forward and presented his presentation, which stated that Copero not only contradicted himself, but what he initially stated was that all 6 bullets, projectiles, came from the same weapon. And in fact, they did.
This is why when Black America, people of minority cultures speak in court, legal matters, or a boardroom, or any other thing, we get so checked, double-checked, and over-checked about who we are, what we are, and where we've been.
Correct.
It's without a doubt. Even if we get pulled over, where do you live? I just live right over here at this house. Well, what's the color of your house? Why do I gotta tell you that? You know? Mm-hmm. Well, I just want to make sure you live there. Mm-hmm. We can pull up to a house and forget our keys. We've seen this, and figure out how to get into our house. Cop pulls us over, get harassed because I live here. Well, can you prove it? I locked my keys in the house. I mean, I'm just locked out. So it's always without cause, we always get raked over the coals about what we say, what we've done, and where we've been. But on the other hand, on the other cases, like Joseph Copero, without question, without impunity, we'll just take his word for it.
Most definitely. And what's even more sad about this particular situation is that not only has it affected Freedom, but it's also affected thousands of others who are currently potentially incarcerated right now as we speak.
Because
based off of his testimony.
Right.
And so now I want to draw my attention back to drawing the connection and the nexus between what Freedom has asserted based on fact and what he's able to prove, and whether or not Joseph Caparo has ever made a similar error in his profession. And I would like to draw my attention to an internal memorandum from the Maryland State Police Department, which states that this is an armed robbery case out of Wacomico County, in which Joe Caparo was the original examiner. In his conclusion, he stated that the evidence was of no value for identification purposes. That should sound familiar. He said the same thing in Freedom's case. However, upon re-examination, the conclusions were as follows. All of the cartridge cases were identified as having been fired from the same firearm, and the bullets were identified as having been fired in the same firearm. I don't think that I need any more evidence to prove that he has made error in the past where he has stated that more than one firearm was used, and upon re-examination of that evidence, like it has been done in this case with Freedom, as in the affidavit, one weapon was really used.
It keeps flashing back to the Chauvin verdict that the power of the people convicted him, which is why I believe they'll have an appeal. If his attorney's going to file an appeal no matter what, but he actually has a pretty good case of the appeal because the public pressure, I think, convicted him. But can the same public pressure get our people released on false convictions?
Yes, they can.
Yeah, I think so too.
Most definitely.
I think so too.
When the community rises up and collectively unites behind a particular cause, automatically, overnight, you have the attention of those political figures whose vote is at risk. Because at the end of the day, a politician is supposed to be worried about his or her community, yes. But really, truly, most of them are. I'm not going to say all of them.
Right.
But most of them are worried about re-election.
Re-election, period.
So when the community unites behind a particular issue and says, we have a vested interest in you looking at this particular matter, and we want answers. We want answers as to why this individual is still incarcerated. We want answers as to why there are so many cases with the same individual who has lied on the stand about his credentials on numerous occasions, who has forged documentation which says that that information was reviewed, a process that is set up to ensure that there is a check and balance inside the ballistics division. And those individuals that rise up are asking for accountability, and part of the accountability for this particular case, as in all cases, would be to not only review those individual cases, but especially to retry those cases where that testimony, his testimony, greatly impacted the jury's decision on a verdict. In this particular case, if you have a ballistics expert on the stand with the so-called credentials that Joseph Caparo presented to the jury, telling you, irregardless of what the defense is saying, I'm telling you that more than one weapon was used. Who do I see as a juror? I see two people at the defense table. Right. Two of which have been identified that this particular expert is saying utilized two separate weapons to kill this person. the jury is going off and being swayed by that testimony.
By the testimony.
It's impossible.
So why haven't they brought this up on? What's holding the channels up? Is it because Freedom has been in jail this long, or what is holding up that channel? And before you answer what's holding up the channel, introduce yourself of why you are doing what you do in freedomfighters.info. And this is why we started this podcast show, Freedom Fight, because we're fighting for our freedom. And the only way to fight for your freedom is, one, be informed, understand our information, and then we take action. That's been my whole life. But tell people what you started and the resources you are helping people to stop recidivism. You tell it.
Well, Freedom Fighters' main mission is to connect individuals who are incarcerated to services upon their reentry, so that instead of them reentering society with $50 a check and being dropped off to a bus station, they actually have a plan of action for release. So not only do we advocate for the release of returning community members, but we also connect them with substance abuse treatment, mental health services, any trades that may be available to them, and just get them acclimated to society so that transition is that much smoother. In this particular instance, Freedom reached out, as I said in an initial show before, and was telling us about his case. And I was baffled behind it. At first, I took interest in what he was saying, but again, how many times do individuals present themselves as being innocent but lack the proof to prove it? Too many times. In this particular instance, upon asking for proof, the first thing I received was a manila envelope full of documents. At first, I put them to the side. But upon starting to review all of this information, I was as puzzled as you were. I was asking questions. Wait a minute, I'm missing something. I've got information that is dated back to 2019, information that's dating back all the way back to 89. Why is this man still sitting in prison? And then I really had to stop asking myself to become so overly engrossed in education in order to figure out the answer. And the answer is really simple. It's this right here. Money. They know, and I say they. I'm talking about the state. We got to understand what we're dealing with. We're talking about the state. They understand that. I just told you how many cases Capurro was involved in. Imagine that. Imagine all of those individuals who were tried
to be retried.
Testimony of Capurro now getting the opportunity to come back in court in order to get retried again. What is that going to do to the state's attorney's office?
We can't do it.
What is that going to do to their pockets, to the budget?
Right.
In this particular situation, with Freedom's case, somehow the actual bullets that were in the evidence collection unit are now missing. Oh no! Don't be surprised. That happens all the time.
No, it's
normal. No, it's not just because
it's with the Kennedy. It's with the Kennedy bullet.
If you have a practice or a culture where you allow an individual to constantly testify with perjured testimony, most definitely you have created a culture of corruption. In this particular instance, that culture consists of knowing that if I allow all of these individuals to come back, I run the risk of now having to pay out a decent amount of money, which will break the state. And that's the reason why they won't touch the issue like that. That's the reason why it's not a full wide press to really, as a matter of fact, let me read you some of Joseph Capurro's own words. You want to know what his thought process was about testifying on the stand?
Absolutely.
You want to know what he thought about his duty to testify honestly on the stand?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what he said. At one point, he was questioned by a particular attorney that was looking in this matter, the same attorney who would initially triggered this investigation. And she questioned Joseph Capero. This is her affidavit. She said, I questioned Mr. Capero about a discrepancy between his testimony during Mr. Becky's trial and his report. Mr. Capero stated that sometimes you just say things while on the stand. He said that you can be on the stand for hours and they are asking questions. And sometimes you just say things, but then there's a court reporter. Meaning that sometimes you say things, you can't go back on what you say. So why not go with the flow? Oh, it was a lie, but okay, so what? Yeah, it was 1 gun, it was 2 guns, it was 3 guns. But no, when you're up there as an expert, the state, the jury, the defense, and the judge is counting on you to deliver facts to them in your field of expertise. In this instance, in thousands of cases, there's thousands of examples that Joseph Capero lied.
Now, I know who, when people listen to this and hear it, play it, and share it, their question is why did the defense attorney not object? Now, here's why a defense attorney does never want to object to a professional person who is the expert. Because you either can bring your expert up there to ask them your questions, but you do not want to object because the court has already deemed him an expert. So there is no objections. There is nothing to object to because the court already verified his, him being the expert.
Not only that, though, also remember what I said initially. I'm going to say this again. I think this is very important. I'm glad you brought that up. Joseph Capero worked for the Baltimore City Police Department in ballistics from 1970 to 1991. That's 21 years. Then he joined the Maryland State Police Department in 1991. He committed suicide, and I believe it was March 1st, 2007, I believe. But he had decades of experience. So whenever he showed up in court, again, the prosecution, defense, and judges alike recognize him as the end-all, be-all in ballistics. You read countless of articles when you Google his name, Joseph Capero. They will always talk about initially how he was highly regarded in his field of expertise. He was called in to federal courts. He was called in other jurisdictions out of state to testify. But that was based on his perjured testimony, that he obtained all of these different credentials that he didn't obtain, and based on his ability to sell himself on the stand.
I know we can only speculate, but do you think he was killed, or do you think he really did commit suicide?
Oh, I think he really committed suicide.
Okay.
I think that the pressure behind knowing that he would have to face not only the courts, his colleagues, and professionals alike, but also the fact that he would have to enter into a place where he sent thousands of people. And in this particular case, a 19-year-old, I'm going to say it again, a 19-year-old that was innocent of a crime, a man that from day one has stated he was not responsible for this crime. He has never, ever wavered. I have read every transcript pertaining to this case, and whenever he's given the opportunity to speak, Freedom always states that he is innocent.
This is why this guilty verdict on Mr. Chauvin doesn't bring me to fanfare or balloons. There's too many people across this land who are in prison, who are in jail on false testimony, bad police work, bad detective work, a loose flying judge who just wants to fly cases, or racism. You know, it's almost like if we use the word racism in situations, it's almost like, oh, here they go again.
Yes.
Oh, here's the card again. Here it is again. Oh, but what if we use it with facts? Can we then say it? Is it okay to say it then?
Most definitely. Whenever a group of people have the ability to deprive a person their human rights, groups of people, identified groups of people, their human rights, then that in fact is racism. And in this sense, you monopolize the criminal justice system. That's something that you hold onto. This is your system, your policy, your procedure. You say that everyone has a due process right. You say that the criminal justice system is there to uphold the law of the land.
Correct.
But yet and still, you allow individuals to walk in your courtroom and present purge testimony, violate the law, break the law.
On purpose. On purpose.
Most definitely. And by the way, for those who don't know, that is a violation of the law. And they allowed this man to continue. And when I say allow, because although you may have not known it back then,
you know now.
You may have been fooled then.
You know now.
But you know now.
You know now.
And you have the ability
right.
to correct an error, something that was wrong, something that you know was done that was wrong, something that cannot be contested. You have the ability to correct that. Now that's justice. That's actual justice. Being fair, being impartial. Actually taking these facts that you know and saying, okay, I know that Joseph Capera is a liar. I know that a ballistics expert came forward and undermined everything that he said in this particular case. I'm not here to say that you'll be able to do it in every case.
Correct.
I'm being real.
Right.
But what I'm saying in cases like these, in this particular instance, you have the ability to correct the wrong. And it is incumbent upon any individual in a position of power. I don't care if you are a delegate, a senator, a judge, a lawyer, and watch this. This is going to shock you. Or a community member. When you know that someone has been done wrong, you have a duty, an obligation. It's called a humanistic duty.
It is.
That's what it's called.
Yeah, I know.
That is your humanistic duty to then stand up on behalf of a person who is voiceless.
Which is why I have outwardly stated and that when apathetic blacks, white people who know, non-blacks who also know, do nothing, you are killing more people than a person who has hatred and prejudice and outwardly shoots someone. When you say and do nothing, you are killing a person every day you are alive. That's how I feel. When you do nothing, apathetic blacks, apathetic white people, people who say it's none of my business, all those words that say I have nothing to do with it, it's none of my business, you know, it doesn't affect my family, blah, 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 blah. You are all guilty of killing human beings that need your voice to make a difference. That's how I feel. And until people do, And here's the thing, we said this before. People act like, well, what am I supposed to do? I have my own job, I have my own kids, I got all my own blah, 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 and all this other stuff. What am I supposed to do? Josh, tell him.
Well, let me ask you this question. Before I answer that, let me pose a question to him. They ask, what should I do? And I'll ask, what would you do if it was your child? If it was your child, you still would have to work.
Mm-hmm.
You still would have a life. I got mothers who call me all the time. Guess when they call me? On their lunch break.
Mm-hmm.
Guess when they call me? When they get off. Guess when they call me? Before they go to work. They find the time. They squeeze it in. They make themselves available enough to address the issue. Mm-hmm. Even if they themselves can't address the issue, they'll go to someone who can.
Right.
And if you don't have time, I have all the time in the world to address something like this. And I will invest all of my time addressing matters like these. However, I need the community support. And you support me by making yourself known to say, hey, Mr. Hatch, I'm going to support this cause. Picking up the phone and letting me know, hey, Mr. Hatch, I support this call. And the only thing about it is, I'm going to tell you, let me copy and paste a letter for you to send over to your delegate.
There it is.
Let me copy and paste a letter for you to send over to your senator.
There it is.
The more individuals who take a vested interest in an issue, the more likelihood we'll get a response. I have not received not one telephone call from a senator or a delegate in my district yet about this issue. And I know they know about it. You want me to tell you why? Because I've sent them emails about it. That's a problem. But you want me to be honest with you? The reason why they don't call is because they know that I don't have enough supporters yet to stand behind freedom fighters. But when they know that it's individuals in their district that are supporting our cause and our mission, guess what? When freedom fighters picks that phone up and calls or sends a message or an email to one of those representatives, they're going to return that phone call back. And that's the type of attention and that's the type of power collectively we need to start to utilize.
And those of you who are watching on Facebook, and I know the podcast doesn't have it, but if you watch it on Facebook, YouTube, and all the social media, there's the number that's running on the side, on the bottom of your screen right now. There's that number. Call that number. It is running along the bottom of your screen right now. So if you miss it, it's been running on since we've been talking. His website's also been running on the bottom of that. It says freedomfighters.info. So there is no excuse to talking about what was the number. It's been scrolling on the bottom for the last 10 minutes, right? So there is no excuse. So, yeah.
Yeah, we need all the assistance that we can get from the community. I want to read a small little snippet from another internal Maryland State Police email that I was able to obtain. And we were talking about looking in the minds of those in a position of power, how they feel about redressing the matter. Let me just read just a little bit here. It says that as for Joe's adjudicated cases like Freedom, the colonel wants an exact number of the cases in which Joe has been involved. I realize the difficulty in determining those numbers. Please be accurate as possible. With respect to the re-examination of the adjudicated cases, it has been decided that we will do them on a case-by-case basis at the direction of the state's attorney involved in those cases. Let's stop. Why?
Yeah.
Why it has to be on a case-by-case basis when you know what you're dealing with it? It should be done, period. Every case should be reviewed. Every case should be re-examined. I didn't say every case will go to court, but I say every case needs to be re-examined.
And here's and when they throw the money thing at the answer, the budget, money, time. Well, what did you sign up for when you took this position of X, Y, and Z? What did you think this was? Right? Because if you didn't think it was also this, that goes to my thoughts of this is a crooked system. No, it's not crooked. Then why wouldn't you not do this? If you don't do this, it's a crooked system. If you say it's money, to me, that's still saying it's a crooked system. So the only way around this is to do this no matter what. Because if you tell me about the budget, then what did you think this job was? Whatever the job is, whether it be the secretary, whether it be the assistant district attorney, whoever goes through that's in the pipeline of this information. That bothers me. Because if I didn't do my job, picking up trash, and the streets was dirty, and I said, you know what? I just got kind of tired. The budget's kind of blown. I wasn't going to get overtime. But the streets are dirty. Not my problem. No one would buy that.
I don't think anywhere in the oath that it says that they're going to uphold the budget. I'm talking about these attorneys, these state's attorneys. And so their job is to look at the facts. And based upon those facts, they are to take the necessary power to act to uphold justice for all. In this particular situation, although it may have unintended consequences, it may affect your budget, it may affect your ability to function in office. This may take some time to actually deal with this particular issue. Nonetheless, it's an issue that has to be addressed because there's thousands of people that were affected by this individual, Joseph Capero, stepping forward, lying, falsifying evidence, blatantly misleading juries into convicting people. So that has to be addressed. You can't say that, we're just going to overlook this and not give attention to the fact that you utilize as an attorney, a state's attorney, an assistant state's attorney, you utilize expert testimony from someone who lied, who purged himself.
I may not be the smartest one in a bunch of the apples, but could we use law students to go over these cases? Couldn't the state do that? I'm curious.
Well, I am too. I'm curious whether they can or not. But I know one thing they can do, and they've done it before in other cases. They can take the necessary action to make this situation right. They have that power. They have the power to step forward like they've done in the past and say, you know what? We've wronged or we've erred by utilizing Joseph Capero in order to convict thousands of individuals. It may take us some time, but we're going to correct this. We're going to make this right because it's a part of our job. It's a part of our obligation. It's a part of our duty to the community. So most definitely. But it takes somebody who's bold. It takes somebody who is unmoved by, those that may be around them that normally the norm for their particular profession. And that is for them to be a part of the good old boy system. So that's the steps that have to be taken.
Has the district attorney gotten back to you about opening this case?
No. As a matter of fact, his attorneys are doing or taking the necessary steps right now to address the matter. But so far as reaching out to me specifically, no, and I wouldn't expect them to. What I do expect is for them to do the right thing. And that's going to take the necessary audience and attention and the actual press from the community for them to do the right things. And that's why we're actually talking about this right now on Freedom Fight.
There's so many countless of cases that we're going to be talking about here on Freedom Fight Show every other Tuesday at 6 p.m. And we can't go without saying this enough, and it doesn't matter because it's a horn we must blow, it's a drum we must beat. And that how does this not disturb you, and how do you not take action? I'm confused about the people who do both. Who this has no concern to them. Like, it just, more people talking about injustice.
Mm-hmm.
How is that okay for you living in these here United States? This is not a third world country.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how it could be okay for anybody to know about conditions like that or similar conditions that are in our communities and be okay. I know that it's a part of my job to advocate for this individual for freedom and for others. I know it's my job to come to the community and let the community know where I need help at, as being someone that advocates on behalf of freedom. And so this is what motivates me every day to come in this office and do what it is that I do, to prepare to speak to everyone on this show, which is not an easy task.
No.
But we really need to really start taking responsibility for ourselves. And part of taking responsibility is acknowledging that collectively we can do better. And that can start right here with this particular case. We're not asking for your money. I don't need your money. Don't want your money. Mm-hmm. All I want is your support, your time. And I want to thank those who have called me in regards to this case. There have been community members who have picked the phone up and called. And thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your time. But I need more assistance. I need more help. We need to really start shaking that tree and get some of these political figures on the phone and ask them, have you talked to Mr. Hatch yet about that case? We need to start sending some emails into our local representatives and asking them, do they have time to actually take up an issue that's a concern for the community? And this should be a concern because guess what? This happened in freedom, but it can happen to your son. It can happen to your daughter, and you'll be picking the phone up, and then you'll call. Why not call now to prevent that from happening? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be your son. So it doesn't have to be your daughter. Pick the phone up. Call. Let's address an issue that affects the community as a whole.
When is freedom due out?
Never. They gave him life without the possibility of parole, plus 20 years.
Yeah. And for those of you, that's why I asked. Because without the possibility of parole means he cannot be heard for parole. Like, this will never come up. He's never getting out.
He will die in prison.
He'll die in prison.
He will die in prison. He went in prison as a 19-year-old boy. And he will die in prison if the community doesn't stand up and get behind his cause.
The justice system, I've heard people say it's not perfect. It's less than perfect, and it's totally unfair. I don't think there's anything that is workable except for the people who I know who are honest and work hard. But the system isn't fair.
Wasn't designed to be fair. If we really look at its history, at its design, we understand that slavery wasn't abolished, that it was institutionalized, that it, instead of it being the Dyer plantation or the Hatch plantation, it became Patuxent Correctional Institution and Jessup Correctional Institution. We understand, we know the history, we know the facts. And if we don't, we know people who do know.
Mm-hmm.
And we understand why. We can draw a connection to the fact of why so many of us are incarcerated.
Right.
At an alarming rate. I mean, this is not new news to us.
No.
This is something we've been aware of. But yet and still we sit by and we still allow our young black men especially to be swept up in the system by I'm talking about thousands and millions. I'm talking about for the purpose of labor.
That's it.
I'm a connect the two coats real quick. You have MCE out here in Maryland that utilizes prison labor.
Mm-hmm.
This is where all your license plates,
and
your fines for for the highway, and the correctional suits used by the state and the police and the wrapping vehicles. So you got MC out here utilizes prison labor
to do all of it.
To do all this. And then let's go all the way out there to California. And in California, you have them using prisoners right now to put out wildfires in California. They use prison labor for that. A lot of people don't know that.
Well,
Now, ordinarily, if you can get convicted of a crime, you can't be a firefighter in California. But now, if you're in prison, they'll use you to fight fire, take you through all the training. And then when you get out of prison, you can't apply for an actual job.
Nope.
But my point is this. Let's ask ourselves a critical question. What would happen if they didn't have the bodies to fill MC? What would happen if they didn't have the bodies for the fire department out there in California? Let me tell you what a California fire official said. He said, there is no way we would be able to combat this type of blaze without these guys speaking about the prisoners out here. Because in California, the actual paid fire staff, they utilize them to direct groups of the prisoners. And the prisoners go into the dangerous parts of the fire.
Yeah, they call digging those trenches to try to cut that fire in half. Yeah.
So who do you think they're coming after to take the places of the individuals in MC? Who do you think they're coming after to take the places of the individuals who are working right now for the California Fire Department? They're going to need them in the future. Don't they take surveys for doctors and all these different positions out there in the professional world? You don't think they don't have a test instrument that they utilize in school to determine who's going to go through that pipeline from school into prison? Most definitely they do.
It starts around 3rd or 4th grade.
Most definitely. And most definitely, they're targeting people of color. We cannot be ignorant. We cannot no longer walk around with a head down and not acknowledge what's in front of us. These are facts. Facts that have not changed. Now it's time for us to rise up and address those facts. Because we can be sick and tired of something and say it, but it's a difference when you show it.
For those of you who listen to the podcast, please, Josh, what's the number?
443-822-9208.
Please, if you share it, like it, love it, whatever you want to do, give us a call, give us a comment. Let us know what you're thinking. And the sad issue is I'm going to ask you, why aren't you doing anything? Because, and I'm going to say it again, the more you don't do, you're killing just as much as people who are pulling the trigger. You're doing just as much wrong as a crooked cop. You're doing just as much wrong as a prejudiced judge. You're doing just as much wrong as a person you said you were disgusted by that left the White House, but yet you still do nothing. I can't see how you're okay. I want to thank everyone for listening to Freedom Fight with Dr. Paul and Mr. Josh Hatch. You can always inbox us and contact us if you have any comments. But we really want you to stay abreast on your information, stay abreast on your understanding. And if you don't understand something, just raise your damn hand. That's as simple as that. What would you like to say, Josh, before we take out of here?
443-822-9208. Call the number.
Just call.